The star maps of the Galactic Assembly showed 10 million worlds. Every planet had a name. Every system had a color that told travelers what they would find there. Blue meant water worlds. Red meant desert. Green meant life. But in one small corner of the galaxy, there was a single black circle with no name at all. For 12,000 years, every species in the known universe followed one rule. It was the only law that had never been broken. No ship shall approach the Sol system. No signal shall be sent. No probe shall be launched. The small blue planet in that system was called Earth by its people, but the Assembly called it nothing. They pretended it did not exist. Admiral of the Empire stood before the great window of his flagship and looked at the stars. His people had conquered 40 star systems in 300 years. They had crushed every enemy. They had never known defeat. They were tall and strong, with gray skin and 4 arms. They believed they were the greatest species the universe had ever created. Was tired of old stories. He was tired of watching his officers whisper about the forbidden sector like children afraid of the dark. He had called a meeting of his war council, and now they sat around the long table behind him, waiting for him to speak. "Tell me again," said without turning around. "Tell me why we do not go to this Earth." His advisors looked at each other. None of them wanted to answer. Finally, General Bora spoke. He was old and had served in many wars. "The architects forbade it," Bora said. "Before they disappeared, they sealed that system away. They said we must never go there." Laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "The architects have been gone for 12,000 years. They left behind their gates and their stations, but they left no army. They left no ships. Why do we still follow the orders of ghosts?" "Because the ghosts knew something we do not," said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. An old female stood there, her silver scales faded and dull with age. She walked slowly, using a staff to support herself. This was Elder Navi, one of the oldest members of the Galactic Assembly. She had traveled a great distance to be here. Did not bow, he did not show respect. "You are far from home, Elder." "I came because I heard what you are planning," Navi said. She moved to the table and sat down heavily. "I came to tell you that you must not do this thing." "Must not," smiled. "I am Admiral of the fleet. I do not take orders from the Assembly." "This is not an order, this is a warning." Navi reached into her robe and pulled out an ancient tablet. The stone was black and smooth, covered in symbols that no living species could read, but the meaning had been passed down through generations. The architects mapped every world. They studied every species. They were the most advanced civilization to ever exist, and they were afraid of only one thing. Walked to the table and looked down at the tablet. What thing? The creatures on that small blue planet, the ones who call themselves human. The room was silent. Picked up the tablet and studied the symbols. Below the ancient writing, someone had carved a translation in the common language. He read it aloud. "Do not wake them. Do not teach them the stars exist. Let them believe they are alone." Set the tablet down. This is what the mighty architects feared. One species on one world. They had not even discovered fire when this was written. "That is correct," Navi said. "They were primitive, they were weak. They killed each other with stones and sticks, but the architects saw something in them. They ran simulations. They calculated futures. And in every future, these humans became something terrible." "Terrible how?" Navi looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. The architects were not afraid of what the humans were. They were afraid of what humans would become if they ever knew the universe existed, if they ever had a reason to leave their world. Waved his hand. Stories, superstition, the fears of an ancient species that died long ago. He turned to his council. "I have made my decision. We will take the Sol system. We will add Earth to our empire, and we will prove that the fear nothing." Navi stood slowly. Her old bones made her movements painful. "Admiral, I have lived for 400 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves with their own pride. I am telling you now, with all the wisdom I have gathered, that this will be the end of everything you have built. Then you will live long enough to see how wrong you were, said. When I return with Earth under my control, I will expect your apology. Navi shook her head sadly. You will not return, Admiral, and even if you do, you will bring something back with you that will change the galaxy forever. She turned and walked slowly toward the door. At the threshold, she stopped and looked back one last time. The humans have a story, she said. They tell it to their children. It is about a box that held all the evil in the world. A curious woman opened it and the evil escaped. It could never be put back. She paused. You are about to open that box, Admiral, and when you do, you will not be able to close it again. She left. The room was quiet for a long moment. General Bora cleared his throat. Admiral, perhaps we should consider. Prepare the fleet, said. 200 ships, full invasion force. We leave in 3 cycles. No one argued. No one dared. 3 days later, the largest fleet ever assembled jumped toward the forbidden sector. They carried enough weapons to destroy 100 worlds. They carried soldiers who had never lost a battle. They carried the pride of an empire that believed itself unbeatable. They did not know that they were about to wake something that had slept for millions of years. They did not know that the architects had not sealed Earth away to protect the galaxy from humans. They had sealed it away to protect humans from knowing they had something to fight. And now that protection was about to end. The fleet came out of jump space near the 4th planet of the Sol system. 200 warships hung in the darkness like a swarm of metal insects. Their weapons were charged. Their soldiers were ready. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the small blue world in the distance. It was beautiful, even he had to admit that. The planet was wrapped in white clouds and blue oceans. It looked peaceful. It looked harmless. Lieutenant worked at her station, running scans on the planet. She was young and smart, one of the best science officers in the fleet, but the readings she was getting made no sense to her. Admiral, she said, the planet is strange. Walked over to her station. Strange how? The atmosphere is 21% oxygen. That is a very high level. Oxygen is toxic to most species. She pointed at her screen. The surface is covered in water, liquid water everywhere. The radiation from their star is very strong, and the gravity is heavy, much heavier than our. Frowned. How does anything survive there? I do not know, Admiral. By our standards, this world should be empty. It is too dangerous for life. She paused and looked at more data. But there are life signs everywhere, millions of large creatures, and the dominant species has spread across the entire planet. They number in the billions. Billions. Felt a small doubt in his mind, but he pushed it away. Numbers meant nothing. Technology meant everything. And these humans had only begun to explore their own solar system. They were infants compared to the... Open a channel, he ordered. Standard subjugation message. The communications officer sent the signal. The message was simple. It had worked on 100 worlds before. Surrender your planet. Submit to rule. Resistance will result in destruction. They waited, expected silence. Primitive species usually did not understand what was happening at first. It often took a demonstration to make them see the truth. But then a response came. It was crude, sent through simple radio waves. The translation was rough but clear enough. Unknown vessels, this is Earth Defense Command. Identify yourselves. How are you broadcasting on this frequency? Smiled. They did not even understand that there was life beyond their world. They probably thought this was some kind of trick. Send another message, he said. Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender or we will demonstrate our power. The message was sent. The response came quickly. We do not know who you are or where you come from, but if you are threatening Earth, you should know that we will defend ourselves. This is your only warning. Warning? They were warning him. laughed out loud. His officers laughed with him. The idea that these primitives could threaten the greatest fleet in the galaxy was absurd. "Target an empty ocean region," said. "Fire one plasma lance. Let them see what they face." The weapons officer locked onto a spot in the middle of a great ocean, far from any land. The plasma lance charged and fired. A beam of white energy shot across space and struck the water. The impact was massive. Water turned to steam instantly. A wave of destruction spread outward. Everything within 10 kilometers was simply gone. Watch the destruction with satisfaction. Now they understand. But the next message from Earth was not a surrender. The voice was different this time. Harder, colder. "You have committed an act of war against the planet Earth. All military forces have been activated. All nations have been informed. You will receive no more warnings from us." Felt confused. Nations. They had separate nations. They were not even united as a planet, and they thought they could fight a fleet of 200 warships. "Admiral," Lieutenant said, her voice was worried. "I am detecting launches from the planet's surface. Many launches." "What kind of launches?" "Primitive rockets, chemical propulsion, very basic." She studied her screen. "They are carrying explosive weapons, nuclear weapons." Relaxed. Nuclear weapons were old technology. His shields could handle nuclear explosions without any damage. "Let them come," he said. "They will see how useless their weapons are." The first wave of missiles reached the fleet 6 hours later. They were slow and clumsy compared to weapons. The fleet's defense systems shot most of them down easily. A few got through and exploded against the shields of the outer ships. The shields held. No damage was done. "You see," said to his officers, "this is what the architects feared, slow rockets and primitive explosives." But Lieutenant was not smiling. She was staring at her screen with wide eyes. "Admiral, you need to see this." Walked over. The screen showed a view of the planet's surface, pointed at several locations. "Here, here, and here." She zoomed in on the images. "They are building something, many things, and they are building them fast." Looked at the images. On every continent, humans were working. Factories were running day and night. Machines were being built. Ships were being modified. It had been only 6 hours since the attack, but already they were changing. "What are they building?" "I think they are trying to build ships that can reach us." Looked up at him. "Admiral, they learned about us 6 hours ago. They have already started building a space fleet." Felt the first real moment of doubt. It was impossible. No species could organize that quickly. No species could build that fast. When they had first faced an enemy from space, it had taken them years to respond. These humans had taken hours. "It does not matter," said, but his voice was less certain now. "They cannot build anything that can threaten us. Prepare the ground invasion. We will take their planet and end this." The invasion was planned for the next morning. 50,000 soldiers would land at key locations around the planet. They would destroy military bases, capture leaders, and force surrender. It had worked 100 times before. As the soldiers prepared, received one final message from Earth. This one was different. It was not from any military command. It was from a single person, broadcasting on an open channel. "To the aliens who attacked our ocean. My name is Jin. I am a pilot. I want you to know that we are not afraid of you. We have fought each other for thousands of years. We have survived everything this world has thrown at us. Ice ages, plagues, disasters. We are still here." There was a pause, then the voice continued. "You made a mistake coming here. You could have left us alone. You could have let us live in peace. But you showed us that there are enemies in the stars, and now we know. Now we have something new to fight." The message ended. Stared at the communication screen for a long moment. He told himself it was nothing, just words from a primitive creature who did not understand what was coming. But somewhere deep inside him, a small voice whispered that maybe Elder Navi had been right. Maybe the box should have stayed closed. Major had fought in 12 wars. He had killed enemies on a dozen worlds. He was considered one of the finest soldiers in the Empire. His troops were the elite of the elite, trained since birth for combat. Each soldier stood 8 feet tall and wore armor made from alloys that could stop starship weapons. On the morning of the invasion, stood in the landing craft with his best soldiers. They were going to hit a military base on the coast of a large landmass. Intelligence said there were only a few hundred human defenders there. It would be easy. The craft landed hard. The doors opened. Soldiers poured out onto the strange world. The first thing noticed was the gravity. It pulled at him like invisible hands, making every step harder than it should be. The air was thick and wet and smelled strange. The sun was too bright, burning down from a sky that was the wrong shade of blue. The second thing he noticed was the sound of weapons firing. The humans were already shooting at them, almost laughed. Their weapons were primitive. They fired metal projectiles instead of energy beams. The bullets bounced off armor like rain. Forward ordered, secure the base. His soldiers moved toward the buildings. The human defenders were falling back, retreating into the structures. This was going exactly as planned. Then something strange happened. A group of 5 humans broke away from the retreat. Instead of running for cover, they ran toward the soldiers. They were carrying packs on their backs and holding triggers in their hands. Understood too late. The humans reached his front line and detonated themselves. The explosions were massive. The blast killed the 5 humans instantly, but it also killed 9 soldiers. Their armor, which could stop starship weapons, could not stop an explosion from 1 meter away. Stared in shock. They had killed themselves. They had run into certain death just to take his soldiers with them. "What kind of creatures do this?" one of his officers asked. They did not have time to answer. More humans were attacking now, but they were not fighting like any enemy had ever seen. A human soldier with half his arm blown off continued firing his weapon with his other hand. A female officer, bleeding from a wound in her stomach, dragged herself across the ground to retrieve a fallen weapon and kept shooting. An old man with gray hair threw himself onto a soldier and jammed a knife into a gap in the armor, stabbing again and again until other soldiers killed him. They did not surrender, they did not run, they did not show fear. In a corridor inside the base, encountered a young woman in uniform. Her name was Sergeant. She was small, barely half the height of a soldier. She had a broken weapon in her hands and blood on her face. Could see that 3 of her ribs were broken. She was breathing in short, painful gasps. Any sane creature would have given up. She looked at him and smiled. Then she raised her weapon and fired. The fight lasted 40 minutes. Killed 19 soldiers in that corridor. She used her broken weapon until it stopped working completely. Then she picked up a metal bar and used that. When the bar was knocked from her hands, she used a knife. When the knife broke, she used her fists. She was finally shot 7 times before she fell. But even then, lying in a pool of her own blood, she reached for something on her belt. A small round object. A primitive grenade. She pulled the pin and smiled one last time. The explosion killed her and 3 more soldiers. Stood in the ruined corridor, surrounded by the bodies of his elite troops, and felt something he had never felt in 12 wars. Fear. He activated his communication device and called the Admiral. "Admiral, this is Major. I am requesting immediate withdrawal." His voice was annoyed. "Withdrawal? You have the most advanced soldiers in the fleet. Why would you withdraw?" "Because these creatures are not what we thought they were." Looked around at the destruction. "They do not calculate odds. They do not recognize superior force. When they are wounded, they keep fighting. When they are surrounded, they kill themselves to take us with them. They are not soldiers, Admiral. They are something else entirely." "What are you saying, Major?" Thought carefully about his answer. He thought about the young woman who had killed 19 of his best soldiers with broken ribs and a damaged weapon. He thought about the humans who had detonated themselves. He thought about the old man with the knife. "I am saying that the architects were right to lock this world away," said. "These humans are not primitives, Admiral. They are apex predators. They have spent millions of years fighting to survive on a world that should have killed them. They fight like nothing else in the galaxy." There was silence on the other end. "And there is something else," continued. "My science officer has been studying them. Humans do not sleep like we do. They are active for 16 hours and sleep for 8, every single day. Their bodies produce natural chemicals that make them stronger and faster when they are in danger. They can survive losing limbs. They can survive losing organs. They heal from wounds that would kill us." "That is impossible," said. "I watched it happen, Admiral. I saw a human with a hole in his chest continue fighting for another 10 minutes before his body finally stopped." Paused. "And Admiral, the worst part is not their bodies. The worst part is their minds." "What do you mean?" "They adapt. Already they are picking up our weapons and learning to use them. Already they are studying our tactics and changing their own. By tomorrow, they will know more about us than we know about them. They learn, Admiral. They learn faster than any species I have ever seen." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less confident. "Hold your position, Major. We will send reinforcements." "Reinforcements will not help," said. "The only thing that will help is leaving this world and never coming back." The architects knew. They knew what these humans would become if they ever had a reason to fight something other than each other. He looked out a broken window at the sky. More landing craft were coming down. More soldiers who did not know what they were about to face. "We came here to conquer them," said, "but I think we have done something much worse. I think we have woken them up." The line went dead. Above the base, the sky was filling with ships and fire and the sounds of a war that was only beginning. And somewhere on the planet, humans were watching, learning, adapting, getting ready for what would come next. 4 days had passed since the invasion began. Admiral sat alone in his command room, staring at numbers that made no sense. 30 ships destroyed, 60,000 soldiers dead, and the humans were not breaking. They were not surrendering, they were getting stronger. The reports from the surface were impossible to believe. Human nations that had hated each other for centuries were now sharing weapons and soldiers. Enemies who had fought wars against each other for generations were suddenly working together like old friends. Scientists from different countries were meeting and exchanging knowledge without secrets. One of his officers had sent a message saying that the humans had a phrase for this. They called it putting aside differences. They did this when a greater enemy appeared. They stopped fighting each other and united against the outside threat. No other species in the galaxy did this. When they conquered a planet, the local populations fought each other as much as they fought the invaders. Division was normal. Unity was impossible. But not for humans. Pulled up the classified architect files. These were old records, sealed away for 12,000 years. Only the highest members of each species could access them. He had never bothered to read them before. He had thought they were just ancient superstition. Now he read them carefully, and what he found made his blood turn cold. The architects had discovered Earth 700,000 years ago. At that time, humans were just animals. They lived in caves and hunted with simple tools made from stone. They were weak. They were small. They were nothing special. But the architects were curious. They studied the humans. They watched them for thousands of years, and they began to notice something strange. The humans never stopped improving. Every generation was a little smarter than the last. Every century brought new tools, new techniques, new ideas. They adapted to every environment. They survived every disaster. When the ice came, they built fires and made clothes from animal skins. When the ice left, they invented farming. When diseases killed millions of them, the survivors became stronger. They fought constantly. They killed each other in terrible wars, But even the wars made them better. Each conflict brought new weapons, new strategies, new technologies. The architects ran simulations. They used their most advanced computers to predict what the humans would become. The results were always the same. In every simulation, the humans eventually discovered space travel. And in every simulation, within 200 years of leaving their planet, they became the dominant species in the galaxy. Not through better technology, not through greater numbers, through sheer unstoppable will. The architects studied other death worlds, planets with extreme conditions that produced tough, aggressive species. But none of them were like Earth. No other world had so much variety. Deserts and jungles and ice and oceans and mountains and plains all on one planet. Creatures that could eat you, poison you, crush you, drown you. Diseases that could kill millions in months. The humans had evolved to survive all of it. Their bodies were designed for endurance. They could chase prey for days without stopping. They could heal from terrible wounds. They could survive almost anywhere. But it was their minds that truly frightened the architects. Humans did not understand the concept of impossible. When they faced a problem, they did not calculate the odds and give up. They simply kept trying until they succeeded or died. Often, they chose death over surrender. They held grudges for generations. They would spend their entire lives seeking revenge for wrongs done to their ancestors. They built monuments to remember their dead and wrote stories to pass down their hatred. And they were creative in ways that disturbed the architects deeply. Given any tool, they would find a way to turn it into a weapon. Given any situation, they would find a way to gain advantage. They lied. They cheated. They broke rules. They did whatever was necessary to win. The architects made a decision. They would not destroy the humans. That would be cruel, and the architects were not cruel. But they would not let the humans discover that life existed beyond their world. They sealed the Sol system. They created the law that no species could ever go there. The reason was simple. Left alone, humans would fight each other. They would have wars and make peace and slowly improve over thousands of years. Eventually, they might develop space travel and join the galactic community as equals. But if they were attacked, if they were given an enemy to unite against, something different would happen. They would stop fighting each other. They would combine their endless creativity and their unbreakable will against a common threat, and they would become something terrible. The architects wrote one final note in their files. The humans are not a danger to the galaxy as they are. They are only a danger if they are given a reason to become something more. We have sealed their world to protect them from the galaxy. But in truth, we have sealed them to protect the galaxy from what they could become. Set down the tablet, his hands were shaking. He thought about the past 4 days. He thought about the human soldiers who killed themselves to take troops with them. He thought about the factories running day and night. He thought about the enemies who had become allies in a matter of hours. He had given them a reason. He had attacked their home. He had killed their people. He had shown them that they were not alone in the universe, and that the universe was dangerous. A message arrived from Lieutenant. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Admiral, you need to see the latest images from the planet's surface." Opened the files, his heart stopped. The humans were building ships, real ships, not the crude rockets they had before, but actual spacecraft. They had captured technology from the ground battles and were already copying it. Teams of engineers were working around the clock, reverse engineering weapons and engines and shields. In 4 days, they had gone from primitive rockets to functional space vessels. How is this possible? Asked no one. But he knew the answer. The architects had warned them. The humans learned. They adapted. They improved. Given a challenge, they would throw everything they had at it until they won. And had given them the greatest challenge of their history. He stood slowly and walked to the window. The blue planet hung in the darkness, beautiful and terrible. He had come here to add another world to the empire. He had believed it would be easy. Now he understood the truth. He had not come to conquer Earth. He had come to awaken something that should have slept forever. Elder Navi had tried to warn him. The architects had tried to warn him, but he had not listened. And now it was too late. "Prepare the fleet for withdrawal," ordered. "We are leaving." "Sir," an officer asked. "We are retreating." Looked at his reflection in the dark window. He looked old, tired, afraid. "We are not retreating," he said quietly. "We are running, and I am not sure that will be enough." The fleet prepared to run. Only 83 ships remained from the original 200. The rest were broken, burned, drifting dead in the darkness of space. Admiral had never lost a battle before. Now he had lost everything. "Jump drives charging," his navigation officer reported. "We will be ready to leave in 10 minutes. Nodded, he did not speak. There was nothing to say. Lieutenant suddenly stood up from her station. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something that looked like disbelief. "Admiral, there are ships launching from Earth's surface." "More missiles." "No, sir," his voice was shaking. "Ships, actual ships, 47 of them." Walked to her station and looked at the screen. She was right. 47 vessels were rising from different locations around the planet. They were ugly things, crude metal shapes with mismatched parts and weapons that had clearly been taken from crashed craft. Some of them looked like they had been put together from pieces of civilian aircraft and stolen alien technology. They should not have been able to fly. They should not have been able to reach orbit. They should not have existed at all. But they did. "They built a fleet," whispered. "In 4 days they built a fleet from nothing." The human ships formed up in a loose formation. They were slow compared to vessels. Their shields were weak. Their weapons were a strange mix of human missiles and captured plasma guns. It did not matter. What mattered was that they existed at all. A transmission came through. It was broadcast on an open channel so that every ship in both fleets could hear it. "Fleet, this is Captain Jin of the Earth Defense Force." The voice was calm, steady. There was no fear in it at all. "You came to our home uninvited. You killed our people without cause. You showed us that we are not alone in the universe." There was a pause. When Jin spoke again, his voice was different, harder, cold as the space between stars. "Thank you. We have been waiting for this moment for a very long time." Ordered his fleet to jump immediately. The ships that could move began their escape. Many of them made it. The human fleet was too slow to catch them, too weak to stop them. But some ships did not escape. Their drives were damaged or their crews were too slow. The humans fell upon them with a fury that surprised even the. They did not fight like a species that had just learned space combat 4 days ago. They fought like they had been doing this for centuries. 17 more ships were destroyed before the last of the fleet jumped away. 1 month later, Elder Navi stood before the full Galactic Assembly. The great chamber was silent. Representatives from 1,000 species sat in their designated places, waiting to hear what she would say. Navi was tired. She had not slept well since the news from Earth had arrived. She had known this would happen. She had tried to stop it, but no one had listened. "The attacked Earth," she said. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber. "Against my warnings, against the ancient law, against the wisdom of the architects." She paused and looked around at the assembled species. She saw fear in their eyes. Good, they should be afraid. Admiral lost 117 ships and over 100,000 soldiers. The humans lost approximately 20,000. She let that number sink in. The humans, who had never fought a space battle before. The humans, who did not even know aliens existed 1 week before the attack. Murmurs filled the chamber. Navi raised her hand for silence. "But that is not why I called this meeting. I called this meeting to share the latest intelligence reports." She activated a display screen. Images appeared, satellite photographs, intercepted transmissions, sensor data. The humans have fully reverse-engineered our jump drive technology. They are building their own versions in factories across their planet. Within 6 months, they will have a fleet of over 100 warships. She changed the image. They have established a unified planetary government. All nations have agreed to pool their resources for defense and exploration. They call it the United Earth Council. Another image. They have been studying our star charts. They know about the assembly. They know about the empires. They know about the law that kept them isolated. She looked directly at the representative. They are asking why. The representative said nothing. He looked sick. The humans want answers, Navi continued. They want to know why the entire galaxy agreed to pretend they did not exist. They want to know why the architects sealed their system. And they want to know who was responsible for the attack on their world. She turned off the display. I will tell you what I told Admiral before he left on his foolish mission. The architects were not afraid of what humans were. They were afraid of what humans would become. They knew that if humanity was ever united, truly united, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. She pointed at the star map above the chamber. The Sol system was no longer marked with a black circle. It was marked with a red triangle, the symbol for an active threat. They were content on their world, Navi said. They fought among themselves. They dreamed of peace. They were dangerous, but they were contained. And now they are none of those things. She gathered her notes and prepared to leave. At the door, she stopped and turned back. The humans have a saying, it goes, the one who wakes a sleeping dragon should not complain about the fire. She shook her head slowly. We did not just wake the dragon, we gave it wings. We gave it a reason to fly, and now we must live with what comes next. Back on Earth, Captain Jin stood on a platform overlooking the largest shipyard on the planet. His sister, Commander, stood beside him. Below them, thousands of workers moved like ants, building the first true warship of the human fleet. The intelligence reports came in this morning, said. We know where the is. We know the locations of their major military bases, and we know about the Galactic Assembly. Jin nodded. He had read the reports. He knew that for 12,000 years, every species in the galaxy had agreed to keep Earth isolated. They had watched humanity grow and struggle and fight, and they had done nothing. They had treated Earth like a cage in a zoo. What do we do? Asked. Jin looked up at the stars. They were the same stars that humans had watched for thousands of years. Poets had written about them. Scientists had studied them. Children had made wishes on them. And all that time, the universe had been full of life, full of civilizations that knew about Earth and chose to keep it in the dark. We do what humans have always done, Jin said. We survive, we adapt, we overcome, and then we make sure that no one ever thinks about putting us in a cage again. That could take centuries, said. Jin smiled. It was not a warm smile. Humans are patient when we need to be. We waited through ice ages. We waited through plagues. We can wait as long as it takes. He turned to face his sister. But we will not wait quietly. We will build our fleet. We will explore the galaxy. We will make allies where we can and enemies where we must. And one day, when we are ready, we will sit at that assembly as equals. And if they try to stop us? Jin looked back at the shipyard, at the warship taking shape, at the workers who had once been enemies and were now united in a common purpose. Then they will learn what the architects already knew, he said. There is no force in the universe that can stop humans when we decide to move forward. Not cold, not disease, not disaster, and certainly not a galaxy full of species who were too afraid to face us honestly. The first warship would be finished in 3 months. The second and third would follow soon after. Within a year, humanity would have a fleet that could travel to any star. The assembly had guarded their secret for 12,000 years. They had one simple rule: leave Earth alone. They had broken that rule. And now the cage was open, the dragon was awake, and it was hungry. Elder Navi had been right about one thing: they could not close the box now. No one could.